One of the reasons I absolutely love iridescent makeup is because it is so incredibly versatile. I love that they can be worn over matte eyeshadows, as inner corner highlights, as brow bone highlights, or worn as face highlights. And I did call this video iridescent eyeshadows, but I did also include some highlighters that are iridescent because truthfully, there's a lot of crossover between these types of products. And I was asked specifically about including my top favorite iridescents, which I did. But in this video, I specifically wanted to focus on textures that I thought would be approachable to a lot of different skin types. Specifically, I wanted to pick formulas that were overall smooth and sparkly. Starting off with 3 shades from Diveroon. This is the Drop highlighter, and actually the story behind this is that it was a shadow in the Dewdrops 1 palette last year. And this shade was such a hit that it was brought back as a highlighter in the bigger pan. I can't imagine a time when this won't be one of my favorite highlighting shades. It's so incredibly intense. It has a chartreuse base and a really strong purple shift, and its texture is very smooth. Next from Diveroon, we have another shade. This is called Downpour, and this came out earlier this year. I will say that this shade definitely has more texture than the one I just showed. But by way of intense multi-chrome and dual-chrome iridescent shades, I think that it's somewhere kind of in the middle. Anyway, this is a very intense shade as well. And in general, Diveroon makes some of the most intense iridescents in my collection. This shade has a really pretty bright blue and green shift. Just like all the shades I'm showing today, it's available individually. Next, we have a 3rd shade from Diveroon. This is called Luminous Luna, and I think this is a really great shade, very approachable when it comes to texture as well. I would honestly compare this one texture-wise to the Drop shade. In that way, I think a lot of people are really going to enjoy this. This is a really pretty and bright green iridescent, and you do get a blue shift with this one as well. Okay, next we have a shade from Sheen Effect, and Sheen Effect is one of my favorite Chinese beauty brands that makes really beautiful duochromes and multichromes. This is the shade Puff, which is so incredibly ethereal. It's almost like a diamond-like topper, but it does have a very subtle kind of mint shift in it. Something I really like about the Sheen Effect shadows is that they're very intense, but the texture of them is smooth, which definitely makes them approachable. I do want to mention that the texture of many of the shades is just slightly emollient, so it's just something to keep in mind. I know some people do get creasing with some emollient shades. The nice thing is these are also blinding face highlights. This is the shade Answer. It has a really pretty bright green and blue shift. The shades from Sheen Effect are so special, and I'm just really excited to see that more and more people are discovering them. They truly have so many hidden gems. The next shade I have from Sheen Effect is called Summer Momo Tea, and this one has more of a fiery shift. This is one of the shades that came out this summer, and as you can see on my fingertip, you can see that it has a lot of those warmer tones. Here is what it looks like swatched in bright light, and here it is in another lighting just so you can see those shifts a bit better. You get orange and green and pink and yellow. The 4th and final shade I picked from Sheen Effect is called Never End, and this I believe is a newer shade as well. It definitely has some of the fiery tones that Summer Momo Tea has, but the strongest and most predominant colors in this shade are green and orange, and you'll definitely see that when I show it in another lighting as well. Here it is in bright light, and here it is in another lighting where you can see those shifts a bit better. The next 2 shades I have are from Wet n Wild, and these are actually highlighters, but I really wanted to include them because I think they make beautiful eyeshadows. These come in big pans and they're under $10, which I absolutely love. I have heard more people really enjoy these than not. If you can get over that the packaging itself isn't luxe, it definitely has a cheaper feel to it. The formula of these powders are very nice. Also, just look how sparkly and topper-like they are. This is the second shade that came out as a part of the same collection, and it's called Too Sirius. I would say that both Venus Swing and Too Sirius are duochromes. Too Sirius has predominantly green and golden sparkle and shift. I love that they did this collection, and I really hope that they do another collection like it in the future. I think it was so perfect. And here is what the first 9 shades look like swatched to my arm, and all of the labels are from the wrist down. The next formula that I wanted to talk about is an oldie but a goodie, and these are the multi-chrome highlighters from Kaleidos. Now, these have been out for years at this point, but I have to mention them because I definitely feel like this formula is very approachable and it makes for beautiful eyeshadow as well. This is the shade Prophecy. And as you can see in the swatch, it's very sparkly, but it definitely has a smooth texture. And here it is in another lighting. You can see the yellow, the orange, and the green shift. The next multi-chrome highlighter from Kaleidos is Gifted, and this shade has a lot more pink and green and yellow and orange. Here is what it looks like swatched to my fingertip, and again, look how smooth that texture is. I just feel like so many people will really get on with the texture of these shades. And here it is swatched in another lighting so you can appreciate those shifts. The third and final shade that I included from Kaleidos is a duochrome. Now, this is the Moon Cruiser highlighter. Had to include it because I love a blue highlight. And it's definitely another classic. This is one of the first blue highlighters that I tried. I know there may have been some others out before this one, but it definitely has been out for a while now. Another shade that was very ahead of its time, works great as a highlighter, but also as an eyeshadow. Okay, next I included a few newer iridescent shades from Cleona. I feel like their formula for iridescence has just continued to get more impressive over time. So these are the Series 3 iridescents. This is the shade Lightfast. This formula is very sparkly. It's not overly textured, but it's very intense, and the specific shade has yellow and green and pink and orange. Next we have the shade Incandescence, which is another Series 3 iridescent from Cleona. It's also a fiery toned iridescent, but it has predominant orange, green, and yellow shift, and it has less pink than does Lightfast. Here it is swatched on my fingertip and then swatched on my hand in bright light. I also want to mention Cleona just came out with an iridescent palette, but I wanted to focus on single shades in this video. Here is the shade Incandescence in another light so you can see those shifts. Next, we have a shade called Starcut. I'm actually going to breeze right through the shade because I didn't realize that this one actually isn't available. It may very well have been a limited edition shade, but if you like this shade, I think that there is definitely enough overlap with the shade just before this one called Incandescence. It has orange and red and yellow and green shift. Another formula I wanted to mention is the iridescent formula from Shine by SD. Shine by SD, just like Cleona, is a Canadian indie brand, and I would say that they have quite a number of approachable iridescents, and by that I mean they definitely have a lot that have a smoother texture, that are very intense, but do have a smoother finish. So in general, I think they're going to work for a wide variety of skin types, especially if you get creasing. This is the shade Virtual, which is a beautiful glowy blue purple. I have several other shades I also wanted to show from Shine by SD. This is one of the first iridescents, I believe maybe the first iridescent I ever tried from the brand. It's called Accelerate, and it is kind of a pinky red iridescent. My shade is definitely on the older side, but even for being older, I feel like this formula has really withstood the test of time. I feel like the formula has continued to improve, but even then, look how intense this is, and it has a beautiful kind of greenish shift to it. And here is what the second set of shades I just talked about look like swatched on my arm. All of these formulas are so incredibly sparkly, like you can't go wrong, especially if that's the type of finish you're going for and you're not afraid of a blinding highlight. Next shade I have is also from Shine by SD, and this is the shade Jewels. This is one of the newer iridescents, and I would definitely say that a lot of the newer iridescents, similar to Cleona, have continued to sort of up the ante in terms of packing a punch. This is a really beautiful, bright and intense green and orange and yellow shifting iridescent. And here it is swatched in another lighting as well. This has to be one of my new favorites from Shine. Next we have also a newer iridescent from Shine by SD. This is the shade Perfection. The intensity that you get with this shade, and really all of the new shades from Shine, I do think that it's hard not to get a decent amount of product even with lightly tapping the pan. So that's just something to keep in mind. But look how much impact that you get even from the first swipe. And here it is swatched in another lighting, again, so you can see those shifts a bit better. Next we have another newer iridescent from Shine by SD. This is the shade Iconic. Here it is swatched on my fingertip and then swatched on my hand. All of the newer iridescents from indie brands are absolutely knocking it out of the park. It has predominantly an orange and yellow and green shift. The last and final brand I'm going to talk about is Terra Moons, because they have a beautiful assortment of iridescent shadows as well. Similar to the other shades that I've talked about so far from other brands, I think that the texture of these newer iridescents from Terra Moons is quite approachable. There was a time when they were playing around quite a bit with flaky shadows, and that just hasn't been the case recently because I think in general more people get along with smoother finish. Crescent Moon is an intense green iridescent shadow. Next we have one of my favorite iridescents that Terra Moons has come out with this year, and this is Doppler Blue. This shade has a semi-sheer base, so it doesn't have a white base like some of the other iridescents that I've shown so far. This shade is basically like pure blue glow. And in general, I gotta say, this year I've seen a lot more indie brands do shades that have a semi-sheer base, which is great because if you have a medium to deep skin tone, you don't have to worry about any white cast whatsoever. Next we have the shade Comet Dust, also newer. It came out this year, and this is predominantly a purple iridescent. Here it is swatched on my hand. And here you can see that there is also a subtle green shift. Next, also from Terra Moons and also a newer iridescent shade to come out this year, we have the shade Skyfire. Skyfire has predominantly a pink shift, and it also has orange and green and yellow. Last but not least, we have the shade Lyrids, also from Terra Moons. I think that this is such a beautiful, blinding blue-purple highlighting shade. You can see how intense it is on my fingertip and then swatched in my hand. I think this very well may be the most intense blue-purple iridescent that I have. And I just think that blue iridescents pop so much on brown skin. Third set of shades looks like swatched on my arm. I really hope you enjoyed seeing how many beautiful sparkly iridescent formulas that have an approachable texture there are out there. And as you can see, there's definitely some overlap with some of the shifts in these shades. I'd love to hear in the comments if you've tried any of these formulas yourself or have any that have been on your wish list to try. If you want to see more videos dedicated to iridescents, definitely let me know in the comments. And if you happen to be looking for highlighting shades that don't have sparkle, that video is coming very soon. Also, let me know in the comments if there's any formulas you recommend that I try. As always, I hope you found this video helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.